Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, a channel devoted to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and today we're looking at the Marvel Champions Hero Packs, Shuri and Silk. Okay, so first we're going to take a look at Silk. I am a lifelong comic book fan, read thousands and thousands of comics. Never read a comic with Silk in it. I know who she is, I just never really read anything with her in it, so I don't really have a really strong thematic connection to this character. I do notice that kind of Marvel likes to kind of dip the toe in the water a little bit, and you start kind of seeing a lot of a certain character. I've been seeing more and more of her, I think, between like Marvel Crisis Protocol, Marvel Champions, these kind of characters, they get licensed out, or Marvel might ask them, hey, can you do this character next? Because they plan on maybe eventually having a movie come out for the MCU or whatever. I think she's going to be in the PlayStation 3 Spider-Man, or PlayStation's Spider-Man 3. I think she's going to be the next one of the people in that game and stuff. So I think they're kind of starting to get her known a little more and more. Now, the reason I mentioned my thematic connection, or maybe non-connection to this character, is because of course, we get excited when there's a character that we really love. We're like, yes, I want to get that hero pack because I love that character, right? But this happens to be one where I was kind of hoping for a better thematic connection for me, because this, outside of Cable, is the most excited I've been about for a character of all in the whole game's life, right? Her kit is so very fascinating and interesting to me. A lot of interesting choices to be made. Now, there, of course, Arkham Horror and Lord of the Rings, the card game, they're the kind of the sister games of Marvel Champions, those three games. A lot of similarities in terms of designers and things like that. And so this whole kind of subset of ideas or mechanisms where you use, like, there's this thing where they use the victory display in the other kind of games where you'll remove cards from the deck and counter deck and stuff, and you'll get bonuses based on that. She kind of revolves around that kind of idea. Now, it's really amazingly interesting to me also because her whole kit goes not on like anything that's printed on the card. It's not like the villain or the minions attack or their thwart or even their abilities, but just this, like, the outside of the game, their modular set, like what modular set they come from, which is really a fascinating thing because it's kind of a bit of a breaking the fourth wall. So I love that idea. It's really bonkersly interesting. So let's take a look at her, her card here. Now, I left her unsleeved so we could see a little easier, but I did play with her, so I did sleeve up that, so hopefully we won't have too much glare. But so she is, she gets to have cards tucked under her from the encounter set, okay? She can discard a card once per round to draw 2 cards, but her whole kit sort of revolves around this idea of tucking cards. So when you resolve a treachery, or when you defeat a side scheme or a minion, now that means any way you do it except for your allies, you will be able to tuck them underneath here, and she'll get bonuses based on that. And so just the idea of, like, this is what creates this interesting concept for her, right? Because all of her cards will become stronger, and she will become stronger based on the cards that are tucked under her, which is fantastic. But there are a number of ways to spend them, and you don't want to be spending them because you want to keep them, but of course you're going to get some powerful effects for spending them. So I think this is a very, very fascinating and interesting sort of push-pull. It creates a lot of interesting decisions. Now, there are some encounter sets you might want under her more than others. You're going to get bonuses, to do various things based on that. Now, like the standard one or expert, those are cards that when I tend to put them under her, I expend right away because I know I'm not going to really, go against much for that. So those are sort of my expendable cards. And then maybe an encounter set that isn't a lot of, or I don't have a lot of board presence for, I'll get rid of those. But generally I keep, the main villain. So like if I'm fighting the Red Skull, I'll make sure I tuck a lot of Red Skulls under her, and, Hydra Patrol or Hydra Assault, I might put those under her and spend those much more frequently. But then like standard or expert, I'm going to be spending those quite a lot if I need to. The other interesting thing is there's a lot of reasons for her to flip down, but when you flip down, you're going to be, you're going to be locked to 4 cards. So sometimes I like to flip down and back and forth a bit, spend some of those cards if you get down to 4, and then flip down and then have to spend another card. So you're left with 3 cards, but you've got a lot of good alter ego things. We're going to look at that a little bit too. So, but when you flip up, if you feel like, okay, now I'm kind of going towards the end game, you can start putting a ton of cards under her if you never plan on flipping down, which is really because now there's no limit to the amount of cards under her. So it's really kind of cool. So, I mean, her whole kit revolves around like this kind of idea of, you know, these 4 cards, which, you know, this one, she's going to get +1 thwart, and then if you get rid of a card under her, she'll gain aerial, and you'll ready her. So she'll get to, you know, attack or thwart or attack twice or etc. So you get action advantage out of her. Here, when you make a basic thwart, you can exhaust this, and she'll get a pluses based on the card. So if it's the main scheme, so again, Red Skull, you're going to get +1 thwart for every card underneath of her. So that's going to be very, very powerful. Again, like if you have like the Hydra Assault, using the same example here, and you're going on a Hydra Assault side scheme, then you're going to be powered up for that as well. And then the same thing with with her Spider Claws, which allows her to get piercing and then also to attack somebody. So, you know, if you're fighting the Red Skull and you got 7 Red Skull cards under you, she's attacking for 9 with piercing. That's pretty awesome. Of course, that's just the one attack. So these are kind of one-offs. So generally, you kind of want to mix between the two. Again, I didn't play with any aerial cards, but that's of course an option as well. And then here, the Spider Reflexes actually comes with a protection deck. So this is kind of an interesting choice too, because after she'll attack, she gets +1 defense. So if Red Skull attacked you, you'd have, you know, you could get up to 5 or 6 or 7 defense quite easily, and then you'll tuck another to the top card underneath when the from the encounter discard pile underneath of you. So this card is great. You know, ideally a turn might look like, okay, villain phase, you block, you get the bonuses, you take no damage, you put that encounter card set under here, so you're growing your thing up, and then on your turn, if you have no other way to ready, you can use Organic Rebbing, get rid of a card that you don't really care about as much, like I said, standard or expert or non-villain card, and then you can either use your attack or thwart really pumped up, you know, to get that extra, you know, depending on whether there's a big minion on board, whether you're trying to finish the game, or whether you've allowed a lot of, you know, you got a bad side scheme or something like that under. So that's kind of the way her whole kit will work. Alter ego wise, she's got J. Jonah here, who is awesome. He can, as an action, get rid of 2 threat from a scheme. So if you're in alter ego, that's great because, you know, you can't thwart him, but he can thwart for you. But if you're specifically in alter ego, he has this great thing where he can go and get fetch this side scheme for you, which is get the scoop. This is a 0-cost side scheme, but I love the idea because you're an alter ego. Now you're just a reporter and you work for J. Jonah. So he's like, hey, go get me this story. And so you go out and get this story, which is you exhaust your identity. So you can actually exhaust your identity and take 2 off of here, which is a cool ability to do. And then if you have this out already, then these 2 can clear this right away. And this will allow you to look at the top 2 cards of the encounter deck and tuck it under here. Of course, this is a side scheme you've just defeated as well. So if you're in alter ego and you defeat it, you will put this underneath as well, and you could actually spend that right away for 2 cards, so it's kind of a cool little combo. Also, you have Albert Moon. You can heal, so if you're really in trouble and you can't really heal because you're exhausted, but you got a bunch of cards, he can heal you up pretty easily, which is only going to be at the most 4, of course, but that's a pretty nice chunk of healing. And then, or you know, if you play him early on when you don't need any healing, you can add more cards, so that's really nice. So this is a really effective way of flipping down, and you can use your activations for these, and then flip down when you're ready to, when you need to heal, and you could have gotten multiple activations here, but then you flip down, you don't have to waste an activation on recovering. You can just use Albert Moon, which I think is really kind of fun. Then you also get a couple of, you know, your obligatory attack event, which is 7 damage. You can get rid of a card underneath you, and it'll gain 2 more damage in overkill. I don't really think that's that useful unless you're finishing out a game, just because I like to keep those cards underneath of her, and it doesn't have piercing, but it does have overkill. So, you know, that's kind of the obligatory card. And then, of course, the wall crawling version of it, where you remove threat, and of course you can remove more threat if you discard a card as well. Again, I don't really use these for their discarding the card thing, because I like to build them up. I think that's very important. And then Smooth as Silk is just a 0-cost card that allows you to discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you find one you want from a set you want, and then you'll tuck it underneath. So that's just a way to kind of feed her engine. She also comes with a team-up card, Investigative Journalism, which is pretty cool if you're playing with Peter Parker or the Peter Parker ally. When an enemy with scheme cancel out of activation, so that's kind of cool because you can also play this with Peter Parker and the Silk ally for protection, of course, which is good for Peter Parker. So that's kind of a neat. I always like to kind of see the team-up cards, and this is a really nice one. You will cancel its scheme. You have to be an alter ego, of course, which is the time when the villain would be scheming, and then you'll confuse him. So that's a nice way to stay alive. If you flip down and you're concerned about losing the game versus via scheming, that's a good way to prevent that. The reason this is such a great thing is because Peter Parker gets reprinted in this pack. So he's one of the best allies in the game. He requires one of each resource to play, though that's probably part of his cost there. But ideally, on the best kind of turn that you might have now, because when he exhausts, you can ready a web warrior. Of course, you're going to ready your hero, Silk. So you would defend on the villain's turn. When she defends, you'll get a bonus for the cards underneath of you. Hopefully take no damage, and you'll tuck another card, which you can use then on your turn to get rid of, and for organic webbing. Then you'll ready up, and then you'll maybe thwart and get rid of a ton of thwarting, threat that's out on the board. Then Spider-Man can maybe tee up a minion for you and get some damage on him. Then you can use your Spider Claws to kill them, which will allow you to put that card under you as well, or vice versa. So the major combo then in this deck, though, is you're going to get Scarlet Spider. Now, they're 3 cost, and he's got terrible stats, but you're never going to use him for anything. You can use him to exhaust for maybe Across the Spider-Verse, which also comes in this pack, because you're never going to use him for his abilities. All he's going to do is basically absorb damage from any other web warrior, right? So he's kind of like a fail-safe in case you might take enough damage to kill you. You take it under defend attack. Maybe it's got a really huge boost that you didn't anticipate. So he is good for that, but mainly he's going to take the consequential damage instead of Peter Parker Spider-Man. So, so basically you're going to get with Spider-Man 3 more activations out of Silk. Well, now you're going to get 5 more. So having these 2 on the board essentially means you're going to get, Peter Parker's 8 activations, okay? And also you're going to get 8 activations more out of Silk. So this is a very powerful combo, and then you can use him to feed cards like Across the Spider-Verse, because you're not really using for anything else. Or if you have an effective, have to exhaust an ally or exhaust someone, you can easily use him. Now, I forgot to mention also, you do get this memory card, which allows you to, which is pretty powerful actually, because you can take a card and swap it with a card that's been revealed out of the encounter deck with a card that you have underneath. So if you have more of a softball card, and that's a real hard hitting card, then you can do a little switch there, which fine tunes what you've got underneath your, you've got tucked underneath Silk, but also, allows you to survive. Madam Web is kind of a neat card. We've seen a lot of these. Allows you to take a look at the top cards of the encounter deck and reorder them or discard one. So that's these are really underrated cards, but any of the card allows you to do that. The scrying effects are really phenomenally good, and she's only gets better with the more web warriors you have on the board, and then she kind of can also chump block. Dr. Sinclair here in the aspect cards here allows you to recover. You have to spend a resource, but you can recover and get rid of status. So she's very, very powerful, but you do have to spend resources to do that, and you can do that for anybody that's an alter ego can do that. And then you got some just general cards here, Energy Shield, which allow you to spend energy resources to avoid taking damage. And then you've got a couple of pretty standard defending protection cards that allow you to get pluses to your defense and remove some threat or deal damage to the enemy based on your defense if you don't take any damage. Those kind of standard things. Ready for a Fight is actually really good too, because it's a preparation you can play ahead of time, and then if you're an alter ego and when the villain goes to activate, you'll pop up into hero, kind of like Colossus's card. This is especially good for her because she likes to flip down to alter ego to take advantage of using her tuck cards to draw more cards, and also some of her alter ego supports. And then Stun Gun, which is not the best card in the world, that you can stun minions or stun the villain with this for 2. Not the best card either. And then, of course, a new Web Warrior, reduced by 1 for each tech card you control. Really good for Iron Man decks and a lot of builds that use a lot of tech. This is essentially a free ally, although not really the best ally, because you could get a free 2 thwart and then a block for the villain, so that's kind of nice, but not lighting the world on fire. And then, not part of her deck, but she's got Spider-Man 2099, who was really awesome. This is the kind of deck type I love, where when you use the basic power, you can return a web warrior to hand, so it lets you play them over and over again and take advantage of their come into play effects and stuff. So, like, Spider-Woman is a great example of this, where she enters play, you deal damage to an enemy, so you can kind of pop her in and out, which is like that kind of Sylvan deck from Lord of the Rings, if you ever played Lord of the Rings. And then Hero Action here, deal damage to your web warrior control, place up to 2 confused status cards off to 2 enemies. That's really good. And the other Spider-Woman
Justice ally, I believe, gets cheaper with the Confused Status card. So this is kind of a neat little card as well. You'll get another Thunderbolt here that you can use as just a regular encounter set, or you can use it for the Thunderbolts scenario. Really beefy. He's pretty cool. If he just keeps getting these growth counters, and he gets harder to kill. And then if he gets to a certain amount, you will lose the game. So that's kind of like a Dark Phoenix type of thing. And then she's got one of the worst Nemesis sets in the game. You're going to get additional threat here, and it's a hazard symbol, which is terrible based on the cards tucked under. He's going to get plus attack and scheme based on the cards you got tucked under. So if you're doing quite well, this isn't going to match your set, so you're not going to be good at killing him, and you're not going to be good at thwarting them, and they're going to be huge. So it's really hard to get rid of them. And he can punch for 5, 6, 7. I mean, it's terrible. And then these little Surgy cards, they'll like replace themselves and get rid of a card that you could use. And if you ever get rid of these, they'll deal 2 damage to your identity. This is a weird little obligation here because you just give it to the Cindy Moon player. So that means if you're in Silk form, you don't do it. I don't know. It's a little bit strange, but this is pretty easy to get rid of because when you tuck cards underneath your identity, instead you tuck them under here, and you can just get rid of it after that. So it's one of the easiest obligations to get rid of, other than the original ones where you just kind of exhaust your hero. But yeah, this is a very tough set, but a very, I think maybe a little fair because she's a very strong hero. Okay, now next up we've got Black Panther Shuri, a great character. I like the fact that they did her fur-lined cloak for this. That's kind of something I missed when I watched Black Panther 2, although that is one of my favorite of the MCU movies. But this is an interesting character. They do this kind of a lot where they will bring out a character that we've seen before, and they'll sort of give another iteration of that. In some of the other games, like I know I mentioned Lord of the Rings and stuff a lot, but it's kind of interesting because sometimes you'll see heroes and talking or listening to the designers talk about them and stuff. They'll say, "Oh yeah, this is an idea. This is an idea we had for this other hero in the past," and then we're like, "Well, they could be their own hero." So it's kind of interesting to see like a different take, how you can do these different takes on the heroes. And so the original Black Panther built up all these upgrades, and then you would use Wakanda Forevers to, chain them all, right? And that's kind of a cool thing. So here, she's got a little bit of a different story. So she's a little bit different here, where you're going to get these upgrades into play that do various things, and then when you use one of your basic powers, you're going to be able to trigger one of these abilities, right? And so you might deal the damage to the villain in each minion engaged with you, which is really strong. Remove a threat from the scheme. Okay, not too great. Move a damage from your hero to an enemy, and then you can just so that's good too, because that acts as a heal, but also you can ping off a tough. And then the claws, which deal 2 damage. Now you can also get rid of them for a better effect. So this first one would allow you to stun all the enemies that you just did that to. You can confuse an enemy here, get yourself a tough status effect, or this one allows you to do 3 more damage and it gets piercing. So that's a great way to to do 5 damage and piercing if you've got a really pesky minion or something. You're kind of meant to, I'm always reluctant to trigger the abilities because I like to have them all on the board, but you really are meant to do that, especially since her alter ego side allows you to go find one out of your deck and put it into play. And there is a way, now you want to spend some time in alter ego because you have a few of these cards here. The Elephant's Trunk allows you to exhaust this and up to 2 Wakanda allies or supports, so that allows you to draw a bunch of cards. That's really, really great. I mean, these are not Wakandas. You don't have a lot in the deck, but if you have an ally, you might not want to use that turn, or if you're an alter ego or something, and you have somebody, whatever, you can. There's not a lot of Wakanda allies, but it's kind of nice. And also, this Queen Ramona allows you to, recover according to your recovery value, so you don't have to waste activations on healing because you want to be using it to either dig these out of your deck or using your basic power to trigger these. So that's really good. But if you don't need to heal on that turn, you could spend this on this as well. So you can draw quite a lot of cards that way. And then she can allow you to shuffle identity-specific card back in. You're probably going to pick one of these so you can kind of replay them again. So it allows you to sort of come up with a little engine. And then I really like her 2 events, her attack and thwarting events, because they're good on their own. Two costs to remove 3 threat, and then 2 costs to deal 4 damage. That's pretty good. I mean, they're pretty standard, but they do have the kicker of being able to resolve one of your Black Panther upgrades. So I really like that because it's really toolboxy, right? You're like, okay, well, I need to remove some threat, but I wanted to kill this enemy off so I can activate my claws or whatever. So that's really kind of cool. And then this Wakanda Forever, if you're in a good spot where you have all your upgrades out, that's a little callback to her brother. And that allows you to activate all your upgrades as well. There's only one of these in there, so it's not like you're going to see it very often, but I do really like that card. It's kind of a nice turn when you can do that. And of course, you have Vibranium, which is very useful to have the double wilds. Of course, you get T'Challa in this as well, and he's got a pretty an ability you might expect to have, where he's got 2 and 2. thwart and attack, but he lets you resolve one of the Black Panther upgrades as well. So, he's expensive, but being able to trigger some of those abilities, again, like Toolbox, like you need threat removal, you need some damage, you need a tough, whatever you need, you can do so. Okay, and one of the most interesting parts of her kit, really my favorite part, is this Dora Milaje subset, right? And this is actually not part of her kit, actually, but it's a neutral thing, so you can take it with her or her brother. You can take it with anyone, really, but you're incentivized to do so because this 3-cost support with the identity, if you have the Wakanda trait, is free. So much like other cards we've seen, like some of the Spider-Verse cards and things. But essentially, this is a little subset where these allies, when they activate, you can choose a special from one of the other Dora Milaje in play and activate those abilities. So if you activate Okoye here, you do a thwart for 2. You can choose to remove a threat from a scheme or deal the damage to an enemy. She allows you to give +1/+1. So maybe you might use her to get this +1/+1 on Okoye herself, and then use Okoye for 3 or 3 on that. So I really like that. I love the kind of subset that you can juice up your allies and maybe you can put a bunch of upgrades on them. Leadership has a lot of those, so you can kind of give them more attack or thwarting or whatever the case may be. You want to give them a bunch of upgrades. And then this card here allows you to heal a point of damage and activate their ability. So you're going to get an extra ability out of these guys as well. And then when you use it with Shuri, most of the time you want to give her a kind of a build where she can ready a lot because every time she uses a basic power, she can activate one of those abilities. And the cool thing here is that you can give her the better stats so that you get more mileage there. So for her activations. But this will allow you to essentially, when I play this, I'll use this on her, and then the next turn I'll use it on her, and the next turn I'll use it on her. And then I'll kind of start over. So I'll keep them, all of them alive because you're healing them up. And if you put other upgrades and stuff on them, you're just making them more and more potent. So they become this fascinating little kind of subgenre all on their own. You also have a team up card here, maybe the best team up card in the whole game. This is search your deck and discard power for Black Panther upgrade and put it into play. So again, that's either for T'Challa or for Shuri, which is really great because it seeks it out and you play it for free. Well, for 2 basically, but then you can resolve the special ability on up to 4 Black Panther upgrades you control. So if you're T'Challa, you can go get your last, upgrade you're missing, put it out, and then play all 4. It's like a Wakanda Forever that also seeks that out. And then, or if you're Shuri, you go grab one that you're missing, and then, whatever you've got, you can activate those abilities or whatever, in whatever order. Really, really powerful, I feel. You've also got some of these weird subset kind of cards here that have been coming out recently. Really interesting justice cards. I don't think they're that powerful, but they really fascinate me. So after not only minion schemes, you discard it. You discard this and the minion. So there's this sort of stay in alter ego kind of build. There's kind of weird cards about. There's a bunch of them that have been coming out this cycle. Infiltration, you choose a number 1 to 5 and discard that many cards from your counter deck, and then you'll remove threat burst based on that. But one of the enemies you'll put in, and I think this is really thematic, you're kind of infiltrating, and maybe you do really good, but maybe you run into a couple guards. So I think that's very interesting. And it kind of keys off of this weird little archetype that's been developing. And invisibility gear, this is another one of those like Prism Dust or some of these other things, interrogation and so cards like that. But when an enemy would attack you, to discard this and it schemes instead. So if you've got a really strong justice build, but you're a little weaker, you can do that and then get rid of the threat the next round. So that's kind of interesting. Then you got a really useful ally just in general. When he enters play, you can choose a player to look through their deck for a side scheme. So I really love side scheme support. I think that's awesome. And then this going undercover, you can, it's sort of like a scrying card. This is one that I'm not so hot on. I'm not quite really that sure about it. It does have victory, yeah. But the show of empathy, really fascinating. I don't know how powerful it is, but when threat is removed from this, you can put it on a non-elite minion, and then once you've got as much threat onto it as it does hit points, basically instead of fighting him, you've sort of convinced them that you're correct, right? And it's like in No Way Home or whatever. You've managed to, instead of beating them up, you've managed to reform them. And you get to add this redemption card to them, which is this here, and it's linked. So they become redeemed, and you take control of them. So they kind of there's a number of cards that allow you to control a enemy in the game, and I just think that's thematically amazing. So I really, really like that. And then this really fascinating card here too, the Raft. After a minion leaves play, you can put it under here and remove threat from a scheme equal to its printed scheme. So you kill a minion, whatever, you tuck it under here, you get to remove threat from the scheme. And then when there's 4 or more, now you can leave it at 3 and just keep like a really nasty minion under here, like Mr. Hyde or someone. You've got them locked away in the Raft. But eventually when there's 4 or more, you have to deal one to yourself as a counter card. But you know, you might to any player. So if you got a character that wants to get if you've got a character that's working on like a minion strategy where they like Rocket or Winter Soldier who's coming up, or Thor, you know, you can feed them minions and that will actually help their strategy. But a really thematic home run here as well. These are 2 of the most thematically interesting cards I've seen, but also very, very fascinating in terms of like just quirky, weird decks. So I really like that. And then, of course, you've got another Thunderbolt. Interesting, like gives you some hand size, but punishes you as well. You can add that to the scenario. A lot of hit points, obviously, or any scenario. And you got reprints for Sonic Rifle and Build Support, both really fantastic. And then you're going to get these other cards here. Another Wakanda ally, of which there's very few. For 3, you've got a 2 and a 2. When they attack, you place the threat on the main scheme, so you're really incentivized to do some thwarting there. And then Target Spotter. This is a weird card. This is when a minion engages you, remove a target counter from here, and that minion cannot activate. So maybe not the strongest card in the world. You know, but there it is. And then, of course, her bad cards here. T'Challa's Shadow, one of the worst obligations in the game. It comes in with 4 doubt counters, thematically really very cool. You increase the resource cost of each card you play by 1. But when you ready or use a basic power, you get to remove a doubt counter. So if you've got a build where you're, you know, doing a lot of activating, you can get rid of this pretty quick. But probably it's going to be here for 1, 2, 3, or 4 turns. Meaning every card you play is going to cost 1 more. So this is devastatingly difficult. Then you've got Claw, of course, as your nemesis villain here. He gets an extra boost when he attacks. So he's a little bit he's similar to his villain version. He's got a lot of hit points. But then this weird manipulative music thing comes in. It's got the amplify on it here. So it works in concert with Claw, of course, because he'll always get at least 1 attack. And then this music comes in, which is highly thematic and awesome. When you defeat this captive, you will move all threat from music to the main scheme, which could lose you the game, scheme you out, move you past something. So you got to make sure you defeat this and then defeat her. And of course, she has this amplify as well, so he will attack for 2. Really kind of a cool little clumped together set here. And then of course, this is brutal. This treachery here, you stun each character you control, which could, if you have the Dora Milaje out, if you play with her, and your main, your identity, everybody gets stunned or damaged if you were already stunned. Really brutal, because then your whole board has got to take a consequential damage. You have to take time clearing that out. Really, really bad treachery. Okay, so those are 2 really super fun, interesting characters. Silk has, like I say, outside of Cable, is the most fascinating character to me in terms of like expectations. And she has so many great choices and really, does an interesting thing mechanism-wise, as well as really just creating some wonderful choices. A lot of great cards in both of their decks. Shuri, really, I love that subset, the archetype of the Dora Milaje. I think that's super, super fun. Adds a lot. Both of the heroes play very interestingly and wonderfully. So yeah, hopefully that helped you out to see if those are characters that you're interested in buying or not. But for now, I gotta roll.